Welcome to the Theology of Love. I'm your host, Tad Inoy. Few topics today create more confusion than masculinity and femininity. Depending on who you ask, masculinity is either the source of many of our problems or the solution to them. The same can be said for femininity. Some people believe we need more masculine strength, structure, and leadership, while others believe we need more compassion, empathy, and nurturing. Some people are trying to heal distortions from the past, while others seem to be questioning whether those distinctions exist at all. In the middle of all that noise, I think we've lost something important. We've become so focused on deciding which side is right that we've forgotten to ask whether they were ever meant to be at odds in the first place. One of the reasons I've become fascinated with this topic is because I see perfect polarity expressed so easily in Jesus or Yeshua. What's remarkable about Jesus isn't simply what he taught. It's the way he seemed to embody these qualities that many of us instinctively placed into separate categories. He spoke with authority, yet he washed the feet of his disciples. He challenged the religious leaders, yet showed profound compassion towards people living on the margins of society. He was willing to confront hypocrisy, yet he was equally willing to sit with those who were suffering. He was also strong without becoming domineering and gentle without becoming passive. Now, whether you approach Jesus as the Son of God, or as a Jewish leader, a spiritual master, or a historical figure, there is something compelling about the way he held these qualities together. I don't think Jesus is the only example of this, but I do think he may be the clearest example in history. He seemed to understand something that many of us are still trying to learn. He understood that truth and compassion are not enemies. He also showed that strength and tenderness can exist together. He showed us that conviction and humility can live within us simultaneously. They are all complementary aspects of a larger whole. The more I've reflected on that, the more I've begun to wonder if the same truth of what we call masculine and feminine. I don't see masculine and feminine as opposite forces locked in a struggle for dominance. I see them as two expressions of the human experience. I see them as different, but equally important. More importantly, I see them as both necessary. We may naturally embody one side more than the other, and in doing so, may have strengths and preferences that draw us towards one expression or the other. But if we want to face life fully, if we want to become whole human beings, I think we need to access both sides of polarity. When I use the words masculine and feminine, I'm not talking primarily about men and women. I'm talking about qualities and orientations that exist within all of us. The masculine, as I understand it, is associated with structure, focus, direction, boundaries, and action. It gives shape and contains. It establishes order and helps us move towards a goal. The feminine, as I see it, is associated with receptivity, flow, intuition, compassion, and emotional wisdom. It receives, nurtures, and connects. It helps us relate to experience rather than simply manage it. Neither side is superior, but both are necessary. The more I observe life, the more I see polarity everywhere. I see it in nature. I see it in biology. I see it in our relationships and in the organizations that we create. There is expansion and contraction. There is movement and stillness. There is structure and flow. These are not mistakes in the design of reality. They seem to be part of the way life expresses itself. The ancient Taoist symbol of yin and yang captures this beautifully. It doesn't portray a battle between good and evil. It portrays complementary forces that exist in relationship to one another. Each contains a seed of the other, and neither is complete by itself. What fascinates me is that human beings seem to have a tendency to favor whichever side of the polarity appears most useful in the moment. When life feels dangerous, we move toward control. When life feels rigid, we move towards freedom. When life feels chaotic, we seek structure. When life feels oppressive, we seek flow. The problem isn't that we move towards one side. The problem is that we often stay there. We begin to believe that the solution is found entirely within one side of the polarity, forgetting that every strength eventually becomes a weakness when separated from its counterpart. I think Carl Jung is relevant here. Jung believed that psychological maturity involved integration. He believed that wholeness wasn't achieved by suppressing parts of ourselves, but by bringing those neglected parts into conscious relationship with each other. He wasn't interested in creating one-dimensional people. He was interested in helping people become whole. While Jung's language can sometimes feel technical, I think the heart of his message is deeply human. The aspects of ourselves we ignore don't disappear. They simply operate outside of our awareness. Growth occurs when we become willing to recognize them, learn from them, and integrate them into the larger whole. When I look back on my own life, I can clearly see how much I developed one side of this polarity. For most of my life, I cultivated what I would call masculine tools. Bodybuilding rewarded discipline. Business rewarded strategy. Coaching rewarded problem solving. Competition rewarded focus and persistence. If there was a goal, I pursued it. If there was a problem, I tried to solve it. If there was an obstacle, I worked harder. Those tools served me well. They helped me build a career. They helped me achieve things I once thought were impossible. They helped me create a life that by many measures looked successful. And yet, life eventually presented me with challenges those tools could not solve by themselves. I think suffering has a way of doing that. There are experiences that don't respond to effort. There are realities that refuse to yield simply because we want them to. Illness doesn't always respond to discipline. Grief doesn't always respond to planning. Uncertainty doesn't always respond to force. There are moments when the tools that worked for decades suddenly feel inadequate. Not because they are bad tools, but because they are the wrong tools for the situation. One of the most important realizations of my life was discovering that not everything valuable must be earned. For much of my life, I believed that good things came through effort. You worked hard, you sacrificed, you achieved something. Then you received the reward. There is truth in that, but there's also another side to life. Some of the most meaningful experiences we receive come through reception rather than effort. A beautiful sunset isn't earned. A moment of peace isn't earned. A meaningful conversation isn't earned. And love itself often isn't earned. These experiences are received. That realization changed the way I looked at my life. I began to understand that there were tools I had not fully developed. I began leaning into qualities that felt unfamiliar: acceptance, presence, compassion, trust, surrender. Not surrender as giving up, but surrender as allowing life to be what it is before deciding what to do about it. I began to see that some situations required action, while others required openness. Some challenges required solving, while others required receiving. The masculine side of me often asks, what should I do? The feminine side asks, how should I relate to this? Both questions are valuable, but reveal something important. The mistake is assuming that only one of them matters. I think this is where many modern conversations become confused. We often treat masculine and feminine as moral categories. We decide one is good and the other is bad. We celebrate one and criticize the other. But I don't think that's the right framework. I think masculine and feminine are functional categories. They are tools. The question isn't which one is superior. The question is which one is needed in that moment. A healthy expression of masculine energy creates structure that serves life. A distorted expression of it may create too much control. Healthy boundaries protect what is valuable. Distorted boundaries become walls that keep the good and the bad out. Healthy leadership guides and serves, while distorted leadership dominates and possesses selfishly. The same pattern exists within the feminine. Healthy compassion heals and nurtures, while distorted compassion can become enabling and overindulgent and coddling. Healthy receptivity allows wisdom to emerge. Distorted receptivity can become overly permissive and passivity. The issue isn't getting rid of masculinity or femininity. The issue is creating balance, or rather, too much imbalance between the two. I believe love is what keeps the imbalance from occurring. Love is not the masculine side of the equation, nor is it the feminine side. Love is what allows both to express themselves fully. Without love, masculine energy can become rigid and controlling. Without love, feminine energy can become scattered and ungrounded. Love harmonizes them. Love helps structure become service and compassion become wisdom. Love also allows strength and tenderness to work together rather than compete with each other. This perspective has also changed the way I think about culture. Historically, many societies have leaned heavily towards masculine values. We see this in conquest, hierarchy, and systems of domination. We see it in religious structures that become overly legalistic or overly dogmatic. We see it in institutions that prioritize order while neglecting compassion. I think this imbalance has caused real harm. Women were often marginalized. Emotional wisdom was frequently undervalued, and spirituality itself was sometimes transformed into systems of authority rather than pathways of transformation. At the same time, I don't think the solution is to reject masculine qualities. Civilization requires structure. Communities need boundaries. Organizations require leadership. The problem isn't structure itself. The problem occurs when structure becomes disconnected from compassion. The problem occurs when order forgets that it serves something greater. This is one of the reasons I find Jesus so compelling. He didn't abolish structure, he reoriented it. He repeatedly pointed people back toward love. He reminded them that laws exist to serve human flourishing. He reminded them that compassion always matters. Yet he never became passive. He never abandoned conviction. He never lost his ability to act decisively. And to me, that is one of the clearest examples of integrated polarity we possess that can be possessed. I think this conversation also has implications for relationships. Though relationships are only one expression of a larger principle, many people first notice polarity through attraction. They notice differences that complement one another. They notice that structure and flow, strength and tenderness can create a dynamic that enriches both people. But relationships are only one place where polarity appears. The same dynamic exists within individuals. The same dynamic exists within families, organizations, and spiritual communities. What ultimately interests me is not masculinity or femininity by themselves. What interests me is wholeness. Walt Whitman once wrote, "I contain multitudes." I think that line captures something profound about being human. We are larger than the categories we place upon ourselves. We contain strengths we haven't fully developed. We contain wisdom we haven't fully accessed. And we contain possibilities that often remain hidden until life invites them forward. That invitation is what I want people to consider. I don't believe most of us are missing these tools. I think that we already possess them. The challenge is recognizing recognizing them when we need them. The challenge is learning how to use them appropriately. We naturally develop habits, and then we become comfortable with certain ways of responding. Over time, we begin to identify with those responses. But life eventually confronts us with situations that require something different. It asks us to expand and to become more complete. So perhaps the question isn't whether you are masculine or feminine. Perhaps the question is whether you have access to the full range of polarity tools life has given you. Can you act when action is needed? Can you receive when receiving is needed? Can you establish boundaries when boundaries are needed? Can you soften when softness is needed? Can you speak when truth must be spoken? And can you listen when listening is required? These are the questions that matter in this regard. As I bring this discussion to a close, I'd invite you to reflect on your own life. Where might you be trying to force something that needs receiving? Where might you be waiting passively when life is asking you to act? Where do you need more structure? And where do you need more compassion? What tools have you neglected? And what might happen if you begin cultivating them? I don't believe becoming whole means becoming perfectly balanced every moment of every day. Life doesn't work that way. I think becoming whole means having access to both sides of ourselves and learning when each is needed. It means appreciating masculine and feminine, not as opposites competing for dominance, but as complementary dimensions of a larger reality. Two expressions of the human experience, two parts of the whole. If there is one thing I hope you take away from this conversation, it's that wholeness doesn't come from choosing one side over the other. It comes from integration. It comes from recognizing that what we call masculine and feminine are not enemies. They are partners. They are gifts. And together, they help us face life more fully, love more deeply, and become more completely human. Thank you for spending this time with me. I'm grateful for each of you. If this conversation speaks to you, leave a note in the comments or share it with someone who might find value in it. I'd love to hear your thoughts and continue the conversation together. Until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep choosing love. And I will see you in the next study soon.